Hello, everybody. I'm just about to introduce Steve Cavanagh about his latest book, 50/50, which will hopefully pop in the stream in a minute so that you can all see what it looks like. Steve, if you could tell us a little bit about the plot to start us off, please.
Yeah, sure. 50/50 is quite simple. Oh, hang on, I did get the hang of this camera stuff at some stage. But it starts off with a 911 call from Alexandra Avellino. She calls 911 and says, "I've just found my father's body in his bedroom. He's been murdered. I think my sister killed him, and she's still in the house, and she's got a knife. Please get here fast." And then there's another 911 call from Sophia who says, "I've just found my father's body. He's been murdered. My sister Alexandra's killed him. Please get here quick." So it's two sisters who don't get on and haven't got on for years. And their father, who's the ex-mayor of New York City, is murdered, and the sisters are blaming each other. So they are put on trial together. It's a joint trial in front of one jury. And with Eddie Flynn from 13 and the other books in the series, he's representing one sister, and then there's a new character called Kate Brooks, who's representing the other sister. And the story's told from Kate and Eddie's point of view, but there is another narrator in the story who is simply known as She, and that's one of the sisters who is the real killer, but you don't know which one it is.
Yeah. How was it like writing the split narrative from the point of view of the two defense lawyers? Because you did as a new approach.
It was fun. I like to do things something different in each book. You know, if you read the series of Eddie Flynn books, this is the fifth one. I try to do something different each time, really. The first two books are kind of the same. You know, it's just kind of finding my feet as a writer with the first few books. But with 50/50, try to do something different. And I thought, well, if we're going to have a joint trial, we need another lawyer. So Eddie's voice is pretty easy to write. You know, I slip into that quite happily. With Kate, she's a brand new character, and I wanted her to face a lot of the realities that young female lawyers in big corporate firms face all the time, which is sex discrimination and sexual harassment. I've represented some of these women who've been in that situation, so I wanted to show that side of things and what reality is like for these young talented lawyers. And she was a lot of fun to write. I like Kate a lot. And the other narrative, the She narrative, was really tricky because that character's not named, and it could be either sister. So it was really tricky not to give away, you know, exactly who that was at various times. But it helped. It allowed me to show the reader, well, look, here's what's really going on, and actually, this has all been planned. So that was a lot of, you know, it's got a good greasy fun in those chapters from the killer's perspective, but it was tricky to keep the reader guessing and still make it a full character, you know.
Yeah, I heard the audio version when I listened to it. What have you heard it?
I haven't listened to all of it. No, I don't think I've listened to any of this one. They haven't sent me the audio file yet. But Adam Sims is a great narrator. Adam's narrated all of the Eddie Flynn books.
Yeah.
And a couple of years ago, I got a chance to sit down with Adam and my editor, and we had a good chat, which we recorded and put on SoundCloud somewhere. But because Adam's not, there's some readers that just read, but Adam's really giving a performance, I think.
Yeah.
You know, and he's adding his own thing in there to Eddie. So his voice is slightly different from the voice of Eddie that I have in my head, but he makes it real and real for people. So for many people, he is the voice of Eddie Flynn, and he always does a good job. He's very good with accents. I gave him a lot of trouble in the first book, The Defense, with lots of different Russian accents and dialects, and he really did a brilliant job.
Speaking of accents, you decided to go to America for the Eddie books. Why did you decide to do that, considering that you're Irish?
Well, a couple of reasons. First of all, American crime fiction was kind of my favorite when I was growing up. I read crime fiction from all over the world now, but
Yeah,
and I love UK crime series, crime writers. But American crime fiction was kind of the one that really inspired me. And two of my favorite writers are Lee Child and John Connolly, who write brilliant American crime series, but neither of them are American. So
yeah,
they sort of showed me, well, actually, you can do that. If you're good enough, you can get away with it.
yeah,
So for me, it was a no-brainer that way. Plus, if I'm writing a legal thriller set in the UK, we have a different legal system. We have barristers and solicitors, and it would be hard for me when I was starting off to write a book which had two lead main characters. So I
yeah,
thought it was if I put it in America, which I kind of always wanted to write about, then it solves that problem because it's just the attorneys in America, really, not the
yeah.
dual system.
Have you been to America to do research? Have you been in a courtroom to do the research?
Yeah, I've been to a few. But the first three Eddie Flynn novels I'd never been to the United States,
Yeah,
and I managed to get away with. But I went to New York for to do some research for 13, and got into the Central Criminal Court building in Manhattan and had a good look around there. I spent the day there. So there's lots of little things that are real that ended up being in that book 13. So for
yeah,
example, if you want to know what trials are going on, you go up to room 1000 on the 10th floor. And it's a little clerk's room. That's where people go to pay their fines and stuff
yeah,
and parking tickets. But there is a whiteboard up. Just someone goes and writes in this room, there's this happening and this defendant against that defendant. So that's the only way of knowing. There's no big, like, in other courts, they have like a digital billboard to tell you what case is on in what court. Not there. It's really old, run-down building. So you have to go up there to find out what cases are happening and where they're happening. So everyone gets sent up there to look at the board when they don't know what courtroom they're supposed to be in.
yeah,
So I used that in 13 to Eddie's advantage. Some people are a wee bit skeptical about that. I mean, really, they just write it on a whiteboard where the trial is, and yeah, they really do. That's exactly what they do. And that building is connected to the jail next door called the Tombs.
yeah,
There's a walkway, a skywalk between the two buildings, and in beneath the skywalk at the back of that, there's another street which is just filled with bail bondsmen. Every store is a bail bondsman's office. So it was great going there and soaking up all that atmosphere, and I watched a few trials. But I've been to America, at least half a dozen, if not more times now, and I've traveled all around and book tours. So I've been all over the place, East Coast and West Coast and Middle America as well. It's good. It's a great place. Well, it used
yeah,
to be. It's not so much great anymore, but yeah,
yeah.
it was great fun.
Given the places you've been, is there anything you can tell us about book touring that that you can, you know, write some of your extracts from, like what you would tell us about mistakes on tour or problems with the tour or something? Yeah,
Okay, well, there's always lots of problems with me, and things that happen to me when I'm on tour. Um, but touring is great. It's a great privilege to be able to do it, and it's great fun. But it is hard work. You get up in the morning, and usually around 6 o'clock in the morning, and you have to drive somewhere an airport, and you're flying for 4 or 5 hours. You get off the plane, somebody picks you up and takes you to a hotel. You drop your bag, you go and do the event, then you get something to eat. So it's real tough going.
yeah,
But there's been many terrible things that have happened to me on book tours. Um, I'm trying to think of one of them that would be good, or at least clean enough to tell. Probably not an individual story, but
yeah,
they're really good fun, really good, and you get to
yeah,
meet brilliant people, brilliant writers. I did one event for the last tour I was on. I was in Austin, Texas, at a bookstore, and they had like a marquee thing, or I can't think of the name of it. You have your name up in lights, like on a
Yeah.
billboard above the store. And they were advertising that Salman Rushdie was coming next week, which I thought was weird because he was, he doesn't really advertise his movements, but everyone knew where he's going to be in Austin. But I did an event there. It was me and another writer called Chandler Baker, and she was talking to me. And there was a lady who sat in the audience in the very front, and she had a book on her lap, but I couldn't see what book it was. We talked for about 15 minutes, and then the lady started looking at her watch and going, "Oh, jeez," and she was really, really annoyed. And every time Chandler asked me a question, the lady would go look at her watch and, "Oh God," and she was really, she just really wanted out of there. I was going, "What's wrong with this lady?" And I thought, I bet she's got a book there for either me to sign or Chandler to sign. And she wants her book signed and then she's somewhere else to be. She doesn't want to listen to us talking. She just wants her book signed.
Yeah.
So we finished the event. And as soon as we finished, the lady just got up and almost ran out of the store. I was going, "Why didn't you leave 15 minutes ago?" She was just really, it was really rude. Everyone in the audience was looking at her. And we sort of ignored her. I was going to say something to her. I might
Yeah.
keep it up. My apologies. You're free to leave. But I couldn't be that rude. But it was funny. Yeah, there's lots of strange. You meet lots of strange people. I'm reading. I read a very good book this year by Chuck Palahniuk about writing, and he says he's lots of brilliant anecdotes about signings and tours. But this is an interesting one. Most of the big authors in America publish around September, October time, and we all go out on book tour. And quite often, the bigger name authors, they get given presents by readers,
Yeah.
hand knitted jumpers, or here's a box of cookies I baked for you.
Yeah.
And Polinick was saying he heard from he was having a dinner with another writer who he met on tour, and he says, "Oh, you have to look above the TV in the hotel room." And he said, "What?" Because normally authors, you won't get the basic room. You'll get a pretty nice room in the hotel,
Yeah.
and they have big American TVs in it's almost like an old wardrobe that they'll have. And on top of that, there's a bit of space there between that and the ceiling. And he went into his room and he looked up there and he had a jumper. He had a jumper for somebody, an author. And every hotel room he went to, he had found all these unwanted presents from authors because that's where they put them all. So
Yeah.
that was the anecdote. I thought that's good.
Yeah. I was thinking about the September date you said, because of course your book's published on the 3rd, which is being called by Neil Broadfoot as the publishing date of death because of 600 people being published on that day.
Yeah, yeah. But it's not 600 commercial books. I think it's
Yeah.
probably only about 350. Most, but 250 of those are academic books. Nonetheless, still published
Yeah.
on that date, but not going to be competing for shelf
Yeah.
space with me and Stones. Someone's book on plankton isn't going to be worried Margaret
Yeah.
Atwood's sales necessarily.
Yeah.
But I think it's good to be out on that date because if more people are in bookshops buying books, there's more chance they'll pick up something by
Yeah.
me or
Yeah.
one of my friends publishing that date. So that's good.
Yeah. Because when I first heard about it, you were being interviewed by William Shaw, and I think there was another blogger because he was on the weekly thing because he was doing daily shows at that time.
That's right.
What's it been like? What's it been like during lockdown doing things like that?
It's been okay. I've gotten used to it. I'm just kind of happy to be able to do anything really because I can't get out and sign books and do it. Like I would have been doing a book tour of the UK for this one, and I'm not. So, and the book would have come out earlier. I think we have pushed the book
Yeah.
back, pushed publication date back because of the COVID thing. So it's been okay. It's I've got the hang of all this now, and we did the Locked Up Festival, which was great. Two crime
Yeah.
writers and a microphone podcast, myself and Luca. We did it. We got to do our own little mini festival, much like yours, and that was a lot of fun. So I'm getting used to these things. Lockdown wasn't great. It could have been a lot worse. I've been very lucky. None of us have gotten sick. We're okay. So anything else we can deal with, fine.
How was it doing two crime writers and microphone during lockdown? Was it any different to normal, or?
It was a bit different. We decided to change the show a wee bit and make it much more conversational and shorter. And it's worked a lot better. And we were able to do more shows and have more guests. And it was, it was a wee bit of an escape. I think that was crucial in lockdown, was to try and get a little bit of escape. And we put out a lot of shows, and we did the festival to give people something to do, something to listen to, something to watch when they're locked up. That's why it's called the Locked Up Festival. So we like doing that, and we enjoy doing the show. So if we didn't enjoy it, we wouldn't do
it. It was done to raise money for a charity. Could you tell us who it was you raised it for?
Yeah, we raised money for the Trussell Trust, who support 2/3 of the food banks in the UK. So we raised, well, after Eventbrite got their cut, it was close to about £15,000. So that all goes into the Trussell Trust. That all goes to support food banks and people who needed it. So we were very proud to do that.
Yeah. What could you say to people about writing what you know? Because of course you have got a legal background, and that must have influenced why you decided to write a legal character.
Yeah, it definitely did. Because I felt I had something to say about the law, which maybe hadn't been said before. You know, there's a lot of legal thrillers out there, but a lot of them were, high-powered people in fancy glass offices, doing fancy stuff, really, and they're all wearing nice suits. And I wanted to write about the little guy who was much grittier, but who really knew how the law worked and knew that it was a game. And I could lift, I could lift the lid of the bonnet and show people, here's what's really going on in a trial. So when someone asks a question like this, here's what they're doing. They're conning you in a way. So
Yeah.
that was fun for me to do that, and I enjoyed writing it. When I started to write the character of Eddie Flynn, I enjoyed it. I wanted to see what happened next, so I just kept going.
When writing 13, of course, it's about juries, and they're very. There's not a lot of information about juries out there because it's very secretive. So, how did you get to know what to write with that?
Well, juries, I researched the jury selection process in New York extensively because I wanted a lot of my thrillers are very high concept. There's a serial killer on a jury. So to make that believable, I have to really work it out and say, okay, well, how would this really happen? Could I work my way onto a jury in New York if I wanted to? And how would it be done? So I researched from the letter that goes out to people to say you've been selected as a potential juror, right through jury introduction and selection. All of that is exactly how it happens. And I managed to get Kane onto that jury in real life. Like he could do it. This is how it could be done. He has to kill a few people, of course, but that's okay. It could be done this way. So, and in terms of how a jury works, we can imagine. I mean, there is secrecy around the jury, but there's a lot more information out in the world now about how juries work, and how one or two people on a jury can affect an outcome. And I've done enough jury trials myself to know. I mean, you can read people on a jury and see when they're interested and see when they're not, and you can watch their reactions. So I've watched a lot of juries. I've picked juries myself, so I like to think I know what I'm talking about with them.
Yeah. What made you decide to become a writer? I think because it's very different to being a lawyer. I know there's a lot of constructing of a narrative when you're putting a case together, but still very different.
That's just something I always wanted to do. You know, I was always a reader growing up. Much more of a reader when I was younger. I would just read constantly, and I'd always sort of thought, I wonder, could I write something myself? And then thought, no, I could never do that. So I wrote screenplays for a while when I was younger, and then gave it up and just said, well, I'm not. This is too hard. I'm not going to be able to do this. And I just was a lawyer then. I didn't write anything from the age of about 21 until I was about 35. So it was my mum who passed away in 2011, and she was the only person who ever encouraged me to write anything.
Yeah.
I thought, well, I'm going to have a go. Now, I've always wanted to try this. Well, what's holding me back? Life's too short. Just try and write a book. And that's when I started to, later on in that year and the next year, I just sort of have to try and write something and see if I can do it. And I took a lot of work, but I was able to finish a book. That's why it was. And I enjoyed writing that book. It wasn't tough necessarily. It was tough starting off, but it wasn't like I was thinking, oh God, I have to sit down and write that book tonight. I enjoyed getting to write that time, getting that time to write.
When did you first go to Theakston's? Because that's when I decided to become a reviewer. So just curious when you first went.
I think my first Theakston's was 2014, I think. Yeah, that was my first Theakston's. Denise Mina, I think, won, maybe, was that for the Wasp season? But yeah, I had got my publishing deal. I was an unpublished author. My first book came out in 2015. So the year before that,
Yeah.
Orion said to me, you should go to Theakston's. And I said, okay, I'll go and see what this is all about. And then I loved it. I love Harrogate. Really missed it this year.
Yeah, it's definitely been a big miss for me. I mean, that's where I get most of the live interviews done. Before I did this, that's where I got my experience from. There's lots of questions in the stream from people. So can you see it on the side?
Yeah, I can see.
Could you just pick one out and
Sure.
yeah.
Let me see. How many more books are planned for the Eddie Flynn series? I love them. I can't see who's. Well, I don't know. All I can say is there will be more Eddie Flynn. I just don't know when, but there will be more Eddie Flynn books, and I can't say how many more there will be. Hopefully, as long as everyone keeps buying the books and they're so successful, I'll keep writing them. But I don't have a thing planned out or a set number. Here's one. Will Steve ever write a contemporary novel set in Northern Ireland? Or is that covered by the likes of Stuart Neville and Brian McGilloway, etc.? They have it pretty much covered, and there's new writers coming through all the time.
Yeah.
And female writers coming through in Northern Ireland, so the likes of Shannon Dempsey and Kelly Crichton and other writers. So they're doing it all fine. I don't need to go into their territory. I'll pick with one more.
Yeah.
See. Are you a planner? No, I don't plan out books at all. I get an idea, I talk about it with my wife, or she gives me an idea and we talk about it, and then I sort of have a rough idea about where it would start and what it might be, and then I start writing. I don't know what chapter 2 is. I don't know how it ends. I just think, well, like there's a way into the story here. Here's a good place to start, and I just go from there.
You've written standalones too. What made you decide to write a standalone instead of another series book when you had a break?
I'll tell you what, I'll give you the total honest answer here. I wrote Twisted. Twisted is a standalone, and I wrote that before 13 came out. Normally, when I'm publishing a book, I have one more book completed by that time, which has probably been sent to my publisher. So the time the book's published, my publishers have another book to work on. When 13 before 13 came out, I had Twisted written, and the reason I wrote Twisted is I didn't know if 13 was going to be successful or not. The first three books in the Eddie Flynn series all did really well with the critics. They had won awards, but they weren't selling at all. So the play sold 971 copies. The Liar sold 3,000 copies in total in the UK. And no one, I thought to myself, if 13 doesn't work, then I can't continue to publish a series that no one's reading. Because I can't really make the books any better. So Twisted was my backup. And I thought, well, if 13 doesn't work, I want to show my publishers that I'm not a one-trick pony, that I can write a high-concept psychological thriller that doesn't have people in a courtroom or, ex-con men lawyers in it.
Yeah.
So that was why I wrote Twisted, and I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun to write. Difficult to write that book, but I really enjoyed it. But that's the total honest answer. That was Twisted was my backup plan. But having written Standalone, I really liked writing it.
Have you got a plan to write the Standalone then, Eddie Flynn, or is it just going to be when it comes?
When it comes, I can't say what's going to happen at the moment, but I have various cards up my sleeve, put it like that.
What is it, do you think, that made 13 stick out from the rest? Because, of course, that's what made you win the Theakston's Crime Book of the Year.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a couple of things. I think that was a really good concept, 13. And putting the tagline on the front of the book helped sell that book. But I did a lot of work making the writing on that as good as it could be. And I felt that I'd gone up a level as a writer. I think I learned a lot from the first three books. Everything I'd learned from those three books, I put into 13. And I think since 13, I've become better still. I think I'm a better writer than I was when I wrote 13. So I'm constantly trying to level up, to get better, to do something different and more interesting, and to write a better book every time. I think that's what it was. I think it was commercial. It had a real hook, and I think it was a better book.
Yeah. Given that the last two Eddie Flynn books have had numbers in it, will the next one have numbers in it too?
I don't know. There's no title for the next Eddie Flynn book, I'm afraid. But numbers are a consideration, put it like that.
Yeah. When you were writing discussions about the tagline, what made you decide on that tagline? Because there must have been ways different. Yeah.
That was my tagline, and I said that has to be on the cover of the book.
Yeah.
The title of the book changed from 30 wasn't originally called 13. I think it was called Rogue Juror, which my publishers hated. And right enough, it wasn't good. 13 is a much better title because it feeds into themes in the book. The number 13 is very important in that. So I wrote that tagline. I wrote the tagline for 50/50. So they're really important to me. I think it's really important to have something that will grab the reader's attention. The cover or something, the hook that makes them pick up the book. And then my job is once they've picked up the book, they can't ever put it down. And I really want them, having made that choice to pick up one of my books, that they're really entertained and the pages turn and they're excited and frightened and everything else. So,
yeah. Given the global nature of book touring, do you think you'll take Eddie to another country, or do you think you'll just stick in America?
Oh, he'll stick in America. Eddie will stay in America. Now, he might, occasionally leave New York to go somewhere else to do something, but he'll stay in America.
Given that you've got a really close relationship with Luca Veste, who would you write with anybody at all as a partnership?
Never say never, really, but I like writing my own books. I think I don't work well with others. I don't think I'm much better on my own. doing my thing, making my own mistakes. But I would never rule it out. If somebody came along and said, "Here's a ridiculous amount of money, you write a book for that fella
Yeah.
over there," I might say, "Do you know what? I've always wanted to write a book with that fella." Of course, but I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Because there was a lot of things like that when you did Locked Up. There was a lot of people saying they would write with other people. When you were deciding who to choose for Locked Up, what made you put the panels together with the people you put them with and the themes you chose?
That's a good question. You are you're presupposing there was any logic or intention behind it, but we got people that we knew would be good, or people that we always wanted to have on the show to do something. Um, and in terms of putting them together, for example, Don Winslow and Anthony Horowitz did a brilliant event. The reason that event was there was because I had met Anthony Horowitz and Don Winslow the year before at
Yeah.
separate festivals. We got talking, and Anthony mentioned on Twitter that he was reading Don Winslow's books and loving them. I thought, well, why don't we get those two to do an event together? Because you wouldn't ordinarily put them together. And that was brilliant. That was one of the highlights of the festival. With the other panels and the titles and themes, we wanted to be an extension of the podcast. So we don't take ourselves too seriously on that show. So we weren't going to have, abstract themes of, the landscape and what is society, really getting out of crime fiction, none of that stuff. We wanted to do something that was fun and a bit irreverent so that the writers would enjoy it as well, because they're giving up their time to do something.
Yeah.
And let's give them something to do that's out of the ordinary. We'll give them a panel to do they've never done before and one they can really enjoy.
Domestic Suspense was a good tongue twister. That wasn't what I was expecting when I logged on.
Exactly, because that was all about there's the domestic suspense in their own lives, and didn't want to know about psychological thrillers. You want to know who takes the bins out in Abraham Mukherjee's house, that sort of stuff.
Yeah. If you were doing a online thing like a bit, because he had backdrops when he was doing it, what backdrop would you put behind yourself?
God, I don't know. I have no idea, to be honest. Maybe Star Trek or Star Wars or something like that.
Yeah. I see you've got a lot of books behind you. Who is your influence? Who would you say is your biggest influence as a writer?
Very hard to say, there's so many writers that influenced me when I was starting. I think you get influenced by nearly every book you read, I think writers are very like magpies. You take little bits and pieces from every book. So any book can inspire me. I'd probably say Lee Child, Michael Connolly, John Connolly, Patricia Highsmith would be the big influences, particularly Highsmith in recent years, because I only read her recently, but she's a big influence on my writing, certainly at the moment.
Yeah. Is there any genre or that you would choose to write in other than crime if you had an option to?
Ooh, I don't know. It's a bit funny switching genres, You will occasionally get literary writers writing a crime novel, but it rarely goes the other way. You rarely get crime writers writing a literary book. The only one I can think of would be John Connolly, who wrote He. But I read lots of different genres. So I'd love to write a kids book one day, a book for children or young adults. I'd love to write a fantasy novel sometime, because I love fantasy books. So maybe something like that. I don't know. But at the moment, if you do that and you keep your name, you create a big problem for yourself, because you're supposed to be building a brand. The bookseller in a Steve Cavanagh book That book sort of wants to know, well, what shelf do we put this fellow on? We'll put him in crime. And if I read a fantasy novel, they're going to say, well, hang on, we can't put that in crime. We can't. Do we put it in fantasy? Do we put it out front? What do we do with this? What kind of writer is this guy? So it creates difficulties that way. So if I was going to do anything, I might do it under a different name. But for the moment, I'm focused on crime fiction, for me. And if I ever get the luxury later on of writing something else, I might try a different medium altogether. Maybe I go back to screenplays first.
Now that you've been podcasting for a while, what would you say is the biggest tip for someone that was looking to do that?
Oh God. We sort of pride ourselves on being very poor podcasters, despite the fact we've a fabulously successful podcast. But I would say be yourself, have your own point of view, because no one has a point of view like you. And do that, put that in your podcast and your own personality in your podcast. There's no point in doing a pale imitation of someone else's podcast. And also get good equipment. Invest in good microphones and good recording equipment for yourself, because that certainly hampered us in the past when we had terrible mics and really cheap audio recording stuff, which never worked sometimes, and all of that. So good equipment and use your own voice.
I know you've had varied authors on there, but have you ever had authors on there from different countries at the same time? If you have, has it caused a problem?
We have. Well, we would look at. I mean, I'm in Northern Ireland, and look as in Liverpool when we do the show. So we are in different countries every episode, and we have had occasionally we've had episodes where we've had 2 or 3 different writers on at once, and they're all from different parts of the UK. So that hasn't been a problem. Certainly for the Locked Up Festival, we have people from America and England and Ireland and everything, so, and Australia as well. So no, they're usually okay. It depends. If a good internet connection, you'll be fine.
What was it like doing two cameras and microphone live, different to non-live? I mean, on Zoom, obviously.
It's great fun doing it live. We were a bit more nervous about doing it live, and I think we wanted to have a bit more structure when we do it live. So we usually have a thing that we do. But I think our best live show is the very first one we did at Bloody Scotland, with Ian Rankin, Mark Billingham, and Eva Dolan and Stuart Neville. That was the best one. That's what we do best. So I think if we ever do another live show again at a festival, we'll just do that. Because normally we're doing like silly quizzes or different things, and sometimes that's a lot of fun, and it does give structure to what we're doing. But I think we're at the stage now we have to trust ourselves a bit more, and we'll just do a proper conversation. Like we'll just do a proper episode of the show, because I think that's what works best.
Yeah. You've had Mark Billingham on a few times, but when you did the live one, you were showing video clips from YouTube. What was your funniest one that you enjoyed most, do you think?
For Mark, this is the Locked Up Festival.
Yeah, the Locked Up one, when you did the video clips, because you'd done it live on the podcast before, and then you moved to show us the clips, because, of course, on the podcast, we couldn't see them, could we?
No, you couldn't, that's right. But we could hear some of them on the podcast. My favorite one is with Mark. No offense to Mark, Mr. Billingham, but the favorite one is where he gets shot. That's quite good. Where he's in a young actor. I can't remember what. It might be Dempsey and Makepeace, and he gets shot with a shotgun. I think that's great.
Yeah, if you were to put Eddie on TV, who would play Eddie? Do you think?
That's a good question. What do you think, Alex? Who would you like to see Eddie play?
I don't really know, to be honest, because you don't really describe Eddie much in the books as an audio kind of thing. Not a lot of description of what he actually would look like. So, yeah.
That's a deliberate thing. I remember it was I read the Harry Bosch novels out of order, and it was only about maybe the ninth or tenth book that I read that I actually read the Black Echo. I went back to the start, and there's a bit in the Black Echo about 50 pages in where Harry Bosch is standing at the mirror and he combs his moustache in the mirror, and I almost dropped the book. I went, Harry Bosch doesn't have a moustache. Because he doesn't in the later books, but in the earlier Bosch books, there's a definite Bosch tash.
Yeah,
And I went, he doesn't have a moustache. What are you talking about? Of course he doesn't have a moustache, because he didn't have a moustache in my head. So the writer's description of what the hero was supposed to look like interfered with the sort of the vision that I had in my own head of what Harry Bosch looked like.
yeah,
I I do with Eddie give a very general just sort of description, and again not detailed, so that the reader will create their own image of what he looks like. I hope anyway.
yeah.
In
I
terms of
just an audio anyway.
yeah, you do. So if I tell you what he actually looks like, I am interfering with your connection with that character because you've created that image in your mind. Eddie's kind of yours. But that also gives me a problem if it ever came to TV because everyone then has their own individual Eddie Flynn. And we're saying, no, it looks like that bloke there. Um, so I don't know. I would be, as long as it's a good actor and someone who can handle that fast dialogue, I'd be happy. Mark Ruffalo has been mentioned a few times by
Yeah.
people. Ryan Gosling, yeah, I think would be a good job as well. So, but I don't know. I don't know.
Well, Titus Waller also narrates the audiobooks for the Bosch series, so maybe you get the narrator to do it. I don't know, because you said you're happy with the way he puts the voice across.
Yeah, I mean, Adam's great. I don't know if he does any TV acting at the moment, but he's certainly brilliant for the audiobooks.
Yeah, it brings a new flavour to the series. What would you say um, could give tips to people if they were listening to an audiobook? Where would you listen to an Eddie Flynn?
Where would you listen to it?
Yeah, where would you choose to listen to it if you were listening to it? Where would you go? Because obviously with audiobooks you can go anywhere and just relax because you're not holding anything, are you? Just like
Yeah.
you know,
Well, I mean, whatever. Some people listen to audiobooks when they're doing cooking or doing the washing up or when they're driving. I used to listen to a lot of audiobooks when I was driving, when I was working. I could drive lots of different places. Um, so wherever you've got a bit of time and a bit of distraction, or just lie in bed, put on the headphones and away you go. It's whatever works for people. I wouldn't recommend listening to the audiobooks when you're operating heavy machinery or out on a bicycle. As Adrian McKinty does, he listens to the audiobooks when he's out cycling. He's going to
yeah.
be killed day at full.
Um, the 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 legal stuff is must have been influenced when you were a student, of course. But I think there's an interesting story you could tell people about how you became a law student.
Yeah, I kind of became a law student by mistake. So I was accepted into a university in Dublin. I was accepted for two courses, business studies and marketing and law. And I sort of thought to myself, I'll probably do business studies because law, I sort of put down law thinking I'll not get it. And then when I did get offered it, so I thought, well, that'd be too hard. Business studies and marketing would be all right because my mate was doing that. So we went down to the university and it was our first night away out from Belfast. This is like not long after the ceasefire, but there was still trouble in Northern Ireland. So it was the first night we could go out confidently and know that we probably wouldn't get killed when we were out and we could get home safely. So I woke up the next morning with my very first hangover, proper hangover, and that was registration day. So I grabbed the forms and I went down to the college and filled in all the paperwork, and there's thousands of people there, and I was dying with a hangover. and there were people shouting at you and pointing at things, and you're there for hours queuing up.
Yeah.
So I filled in all the stuff when I went home, went to my bed, and then I went to the business studies and marketing lectures, and for the first 2 weeks there I was all fine. Then the tutorial group started, and they put up a list of everyone's name, telling you what group you were in. And I couldn't find my name in the list, and I went to the lady at reception and I says, I can't find my name on the tutorial list. She says, what are you doing? It's business studies and marketing. What's your name? And she was doing. She said, you're not doing business studies and marketing, you registered for law. I said, what? She said, oh yeah, do you have to do law? I says, well, hang on, can I not just swap the course over? And these were the days when I got a grant. So this is no, your fees have been paid for, for law. So if you want to drop out and, do business studies and marketing next year, I thought, oh, I can't do that. So I just then went to law. So I kind of became a lawyer because I joined the wrong queue or picked up the wrong piece of paper from the house with the wrong offer and brought that down and filled all that in. But whatever happened, that's how it happened.
What would you say is your most unique student story, or if you've got one, if you can remember?
Again, for public consumption, probably not the best. I wasn't a very good student. I say that I wasn't great. I went to did a postgraduate thing at Cardiff University and a law thing at Cardiff University, and we had to do loads of different modules. So I was fed up. I didn't want to do law at this stage. Never really wanting to do it. And we had open book exams, but the exam was like 7 hours long. Like, what can you do in 7 hours? So I remember a vivid memory of sitting down in my environmental law exam, and my tutor was invigilating the exam. And I remember sitting down, and I was peeling the cellophane off my environmental law textbook, which I had supposed to have read cover to cover many times at this stage, but it was still a cellophane. I thought I better have goodness, might be something in this. And he just the look of absolute horror and disgust that man gave me. But I still passed anyway. So you can't really complain that much. But that wasn't good, no. So I wasn't a good student. I did okay, but I wasn't a good student.
Yeah, I can always remember my first law exam because I did like double the time of everyone else because obviously being dyslexic and stuff. What was your biggest challenge of doing being a student or as an author?
Author is much more challenging than being a student. Student, for example, I never practiced family law. I never really understood family law, and principally because family law lectures were at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning, and I never made a 9 a.m. Monday morning lecture for 3 years. So my knowledge of family law is not good, purely for that reason. But being an author is much more challenging. It's tough to write a book. It really is tough. And I try as much as I can to make it more challenging for myself and to give my readers something that they haven't read before, something they've never seen before, and to make the experience great and entertaining for them. So that's a lot of responsibility for me, and I take it very seriously.
Have you got a routine that you use to make sure that it remains unique and stuff? Because people have a thing, style they keep to.
I don't have a routine really. I used to, but since we've been in this new house and lockdown has come, it's been pretty tough to get into a routine. Most days, if I'm working, I get into the office as early as I can. I just work during the day and then a wee bit in the evening and sometimes at night as well. If I'm really going at it, I'll just be in here all day. But I haven't got an established routine yet. I'll be starting a new book soon. So when I do that, I'll maybe try and get into more of a set routine with it. But it's not the job where I kind of have to have a routine. I don't have to clock in and clock off. When at night time, I used to listen to a lot of music when I was writing to keep me awake. So I still do sometimes listen to music when I'm writing.
What's the what do you think you could tell people to avoid when they're trying to write?
Oh, what to avoid? Avoid dodgy publishers, I think, and avoid dodgy writing advice. Treat writing advice with a pinch of salt. Apart from Elmore Leonard had a really good 10 rules for writing, which I think is excellent, bar one. I mean, there's always an exception, but one of Elmore Leonard's rules is never open with the weather. But if you've ever read an Alistair MacLean book, all his books start with fantastic descriptions of the weather. See, a lot of times with James E. Burke as well, there'll be amazing Montana or Louisiana skies. There are exceptions to everything. But I think the main thing is don't worry about it. Just write, and don't worry about how good it is at the start. Just write, get it all down, finish, and then go and edit and work on it and make it better. But you second guess yourself and you stop. Keep going, these things, and then you can always make it better afterwards.
When you're editing, does that change your routine at all?
Well, a wee bit, yeah. I can't listen to music when I'm editing. When I'm editing, I need silence. Which is difficult in the house with with two young kids. But I do kind of need quiet for editing because I have to try and hold the whole book in my head at once. Because everything is, I know what everything's going to happen or is supposed to happen and what I have to change and how I have to get there. So it needs to be quiet and concentrated work.
I'm just. Is there any audience questions out there?
Let's have a look and see what we've got here. Well, there's someone saying they want to see Chris Hemsworth as Eddie Flynn. Would Eddie Flynn would Eddie Flynn have been a businessman if I'd studied business studies and marketing? Probably not. How long does it take you to write a book and then to get it published? It takes me probably about, it depends. See, here's the thing, different books. So 13 was written very, very quickly. It was written in about 6-7 weeks. And then it was edited, took a bit of time to edit that one. Sometimes I can write a first draft in 3 months and another 3 to 6 months then of editing. So you're talking roughly about a year, all told. The time it takes for all that to happen, about a year. But it varies. Sometimes it's much shorter, depending on the book. Sometimes everything will be done in the space of 6 months. But the shorter amount of time I can spend on a book, I think will be the better, as long as it's good.
Yeah.
Let's see what else we have here. Any other wee questions here? We still have time, I think.
Yeah, we've got 5 minutes still. Yeah.
Okay. Will The Liar be available in Polish? I've discussed Eddie Flynn novels with my mom recently, and we've noticed that this one is not available in Polish. I don't know, to be honest, if it's not available in Polish. It might be at some stage, but I don't. Maybe not. I certainly haven't signed any Polish contracts recently. When 13 won the Thixons, how did you feel? I was there and you looked shocked all weekend. I was absolutely shocked when 13 won the Thixons prize. I was not expecting it in the least because there were 4 or 5 other brilliant authors in that shortlist, and any of them would have been a worthy winner. I just didn't think it would be me. So I was shocked the whole weekend, but a good weekend. Our trials with the jury very different in USA and in UK. Not totally different. There's some similarities. We don't have jury trials for civil cases here, apart from defamation. In civil trials, it's a judge. In criminal trials, it's a jury. But jury trials can be different. Depends on the crime. For example, if it's a capital murder case in certain states, the jury has to be what's called death proof. What that means is the jurors are examined and questioned, and one of the questions is, are you against the death penalty? Would you never, how would you feel about it? Are you if you're saying, look, I'm totally anti-death penalty, and I would never send someone to their death, then you can't be on the jury. If you're anti-death penalty, you can't be on the jury. So that affects those juries in capital murder cases immensely, because it's mostly women who are against the capital murder. It's mostly Catholics who are against capital murder, and African American and Hispanics. So what you end up with is a jury pool very much narrowed to white Protestant men. Then there's some, other people on that jury as well, but that's the vast majority of your jury pool. So, and also people who are pro-death penalty tend to lean towards the right a wee bit, and they tend to have also ultra-conservative views as well, so it can make it much more difficult to get a fair trial in the first place. So there's one subtle difference for you.
I was thinking about that while she was saying it, and the interesting thing about that is how many times murder cases are written about and trials. What was it like doing that for the first time when you chose to do it? Because there's lots of different crimes you could have chosen.
Right. In practice, you mean?
What in practice? Yeah, because
it's you learn the ropes pretty quickly when you're a lawyer, or you stop becoming a lawyer. And I took it very seriously, and I studied advocacy. I wanted to make sure that when I stood up and I opened my mouth, I had something to say, and I knew how to say it, so that I would be listened to. So it's a real skill, and it's an art form in many ways. And depending on what I did a mix of work, civil work and criminal work. So going into a trial, like a murder trial, you have to think to yourself, well, I'm doing my job, and I'm giving someone representation and advice that I think that they should have. And sometimes that can be to plead guilty, and you guide them through all of that. So you have to take it seriously. You have to turn up, and you have to be 100% focused. There's a lot of responsibility on your shoulders.
that is a really interesting thing to end on. Thanks for talking to us tonight, Steve.
Thank you very much indeed, Alex, and thanks for having me here, everyone. I hope you've all enjoyed this. I hope you go and get the book. You can get signed copies from Waterstones. They have signed special editions, so go and pre-order one of those now.
It's definitely worth the read. I really enjoyed my read. Thanks for the
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Alex.